Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is August 9th, 2024. It's hard to believe it's already August. And I am back from the jungles here in Colorado, enjoying my time to recover. It was a long trip. I went to Brazil. I went to Argentina, very briefly to Montevideo over in Uruguay, pick up some fuel, and then to Guatemala. Ran all around for different things, different reasons. In Brazil, attended a great conference, met up with Rafa, the Cardano Foundation's Latin America lead, and wonderful guy. And he's really done some amazing work bringing that community together. Met up with the Cardano LATAM group, met up with Intersect and all the people down there, and had a chance to meet with the Central Bank of Brazil, and then went down to Argentina, met with many members of Malay's government, met with the mayor of Buenos Aires, and had a chance to speak at the ADN event, received hundreds and hundreds of people, met with the founders of Globant, one of the largest software companies in Latin America, and various other business leaders while we were there. And we were just getting things set up for the Constitutional Convention that's going to be held in Buenos Aires in December. We got our MOU and relationship hammered out with the University of Buenos Aires, and they've been very generous to allow us to use the School of Law for the Constitutional Convention. It's this lovely, beautiful, idyllic building that you would expect a School of Law to be. It's kind of like Columbia Law School or something like that, or Columbia's libraries, where you have the columns and the marble. And I think 14 of their presidents attended UBA. It's actually one of the most prestigious law schools in all of South America. So it's a wonderful facility to host an event like the Constitutional Convention. There was a lot of bureaucracy we had to work through to figure out exactly how to get that done. And now we're just kind of locking in. Kudos to JJ and Alex. JJ, my chief of staff, and Alex Bishanker, the director of Intersect, and also part of the LATAM community, as well as Mauro and Jose and many of the other guys that came on down to work with us and help us. It was a heck of a lot of fun. Then went up to Guatemala, and there I said, it's time to challenge you a little bit. Y'all on Twitter say I'm getting fat, which is true. Eating too much good food. But I still do work out. And I said, we're going to go with a bunch of soft guys and just go get my ass kicked for a whole week. So climbed a volcano and 13,000 feet and hailing and 45-degree inclines and all kinds of things. And we're climbing down in torrential rains because it's tropical. Did some helocasting and also some rappelling, as you guys had a chance to see. Also slept out in the, camped out in the jungle. And although a Widowmaker crushed our tents, our hammocks, and rained scorpions on us. And so we decided to cut that part a little short because we didn't have the gear to be able to spend the night. But we did have a chance to trek around and enjoy some secondary jungle. So that was a heck of a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it, and got a lot of great workout. And it's always nice to hang out with soft guys, because no matter how much you put in, they have more in the tank than you, and you're always the guy in the back of the pack, and you're pushing hard, and it's good to get sharpened a bit. So back here in Colorado, and I promised you guys an AMA. I was going to do one up at the ranch. We were having internet issues and microphone issues there, so I'm all set up here. I'm actually doing a lot of heavy construction. I'm building a podcast studio in Gillette, Wyoming, building a podcast studio at my farm, building a podcast studio at my ranch, and building a podcast studio here at the office. So I have all these amazing podcast studios that are being constructed, but until then, we're still going to have to rough it with the same background and these types of things. Okay, so let's get to your questions. Any update on the Infinity Room? 2, is IOG still doing any development work on Bitcoin, such as Dandelion? So for number 1, the Infinity Room, yes, we are actually in active construction of an Infinity Room for my clinic. As you know, I have a clinic in Gillette, Wyoming, Hoskinson Health, and that clinic is currently 10,000 square feet. We're going to grow that clinic to about 70,000 square feet over the next 9 months. Part of the expansion does include an Infinity Room directly adjacent to the main waiting room. So patients can actually go in and experience an Infinity Room It's actually larger than the Infinity Room, Yayoi Kusama's Infinity Room in Los Angeles. So we're quite excited. As for development work of Bitcoin, we still do research that's directly relevant to Bitcoin. And Cardano is actually the single greatest platform to learn how to be a UTXO developer because of the extended UTXO model. So that's where we get all those relationships from. Okay. What are your current thoughts on the situation in the UK? Frustration, mostly. I don't have enough information. I don't know exactly what's going on. And it's so radically partisan. It's impossible to comment on it one way or the other. I can just react from what I see the media saying and what I see the police doing. I'm never going to be okay with people being arrested for speech. I don't care if you are a person who believes that there's this thing called hate speech and other things. You punish people for actions, not words. If words lead to adverse actions and a person's connected and involved in that, then you can certainly get involved. But just the speech alone can never hurt you. And anytime we deviate from that as a society, you create a situation where the government begins saying speech we don't like for political reasons should be criminalized. Every totalitarian regime, the first thing they do and the most vicious thing they do is destroy human expression and the freedom of speech. That's why our founding fathers in the 18th century realized this was so profoundly important that the First Amendment protected it. It's the very first thing. And it wasn't to protect politically popular speech or speech that makes everybody happy. It was to protect the speech that doesn't. So I'm not a big fan of any regime that has made a conscious choice to restrict that for whatever reasons they so choose and believe. And maybe the case that there's a showdown and they even try to extradite Elon Musk and charge him with something. So I don't know enough about it to comment on the specifics of the situation, but I'm just commenting on the interviews and videos and statements that I've seen from government officials there saying that you could be arrested for a Facebook post or for a tweet. Charles, have you been able to handle all the hate from everywhere? Any books that have helped you with dealing with all that bullshit you've been getting? The first lesson in dealing with hate is realizing that no matter what you do, you can't win with your critics. It's not possible. It's a hard thing to strap yourself onto not a super well-maintained helicopter, go up 120 feet with a rappel harness on and go out of it. It's hard, scary. And you can see it in my face. It's like, man, we're doing this. All right, let's figure this out. And you come up with a plan, you go and do it, you go and execute it. And you get to the ground, and you say, God damn, I did that. And you're proud of yourself. And then somebody sees that and they basically say you're a piece of shit and you achieve nothing and look how ugly it is and look how bad it is and look how bad you are at it and they could do better and all these things. Now, let's say I came out like an Olympian, like a SEAL Team 6 guy, we're going to DevGru this shit or CAG this shit. Okay. Like I've done it for 25 years and I land perfectly. There'd still be that same guy criticizing. No matter how good you are, how good you do something, there's always going to be a critic. That critic is always going to bring you down. And if you take it personally, it eats away at you as a person. It crumbles your soul, because you think to yourself, I can't win. I can't have a moment where I actually did something impressive or incredible. Self-made billionaire in my 30s. And came up with all these great ideas, built a wonderful company, got many of them, got 1,000 employees, traveled to now 74 countries, all these things. And then you see Steve Ehrlich on Forbes just published an article yesterday saying, I'm a cult leader and Ethereum Cardano is an Ethereum clone. And he's the director of research for crypto at Forbes. It is what it is. You call people out when they say things that are clearly lies and it's clearly slander, and you just move on. That's all you can do. No book is going to prepare or teach you for dealing with that because you're working against your genetic programming as a person. Human beings are tribal and we rely upon the opinions of others to survive. We grew up this way. It's built into your DNA. social media and this hyper-connected global world has dehumanized all of us, which is why everybody's so sick and everybody's suffering from some form of neurosis. It's the hyper-connected culture makes people unable to deal with the modern society. And we're working through that. We're trying to figure out new coping mechanisms and other things. And it's really hard when you push against your biology and that tribal nature that people have. Your first impulse when a person criticizes you is to say, well, how do I convince them that I'm not that? Or how do I win? How do I overcome that? We all do it. But when you're a public figure, you're not allowed to do that. Every single time I punch back, I get criticized for punching back. If a person calls me fat, stupid, they say I didn't do something, they say I did something, whatever the hell it is, and it's a factually wrong thing, and you attack them back, they suffer no consequences and I get attacked for it. So you're not allowed to defend yourself anymore. You just have to accept it, take it. So what you have to do is separate worlds and realize that this social media world that exists out there and the public commons that exists out there, you're playing a character inside of it. That's the best you can do. It's like an avatar. And some people love that avatar and hate that avatar, just like they love Luke Skywalker or they don't like Luke Skywalker, whatever the hell it is. You're a person in that persona. And then you have your private life and your personal life. And the single most valuable thing you can do is be deeply discriminating about the people around you. If you welcome toxic, destructive, cynical people into your inner circle, it will make your life miserable. If you welcome productive, optimistic, really good, effective people that are supportive of you and they push you to be better and they tell you the truth and they're not sycophants, you're gonna be happy. That's the real you. That's not the avatar that's out there. So that's the best advice, that I can give you for these things. Is it okay to leave a dead baby bear in Central Park? And why do you still support RFK Jr.? So you find a corpse. What do you do with it? You burn it? You bury it? You destroy it? And so you put it in Central Park. And what happens? You put it there and people become aware that roadkill exists. They become aware that these things die. It's better than just burning it, burying it, right? It didn't kill the bear. If you're an environmentalist, one of the things you do as an environmentalist is you try to create awareness that human beings have an impact on the environment around you. We burn the rainforest down. We massacre lots of animals. We cause all kinds of environmental damage. If you do scuba diving in Australia, you can see the Great Barrier Reef and it's bleached now. Massive, massive amounts of it. That's really inconvenient for your delicate lifestyle, isn't it? But if it's in your face and you see it and you feel it, you start realizing that maybe we as humans should be good custodians of the world around us. And if we see some of the ugliness and consequences of modernity, then what that does is it makes you take a step back and say, is there perhaps a more sustainable way for people to live in the world? And if there isn't, well, then we just have to accept that generations that come after us, every generation will see less and less biodiversity and less of the species that we grew up with. The things we took for granted will no longer be on this planet. They'll be extinct. They'll be gone. It's hard to be an environmentalist because it's an uncomfortable thing. And you're fighting against, in some cases, progress, or at least reminding people that progress isn't free and that true progress is lifting everybody together. He's a good pig. Question: can a decentralized social network really help consensus and truth? If so, how does it avoid traps of confirmation bias and group bias, xenophobia? So like attracts like, and what ends up happening is if you have a normal social network, people create echo chambers. So you tend to become friends with the people who confirm your biases and believe the same things you believe, and you tend to kick people out of your social network who believe the opposite. What you want to do is you want to create a meta protocol that sits above the social networks and create marketplaces for truth. Prediction markets, Robin Hanson is a great guy for this, are a mechanism that you can use to create economic rewards for that. And you create consequences for misinformation. And the consequences shouldn't be deplatforming. What they should be is a reputation system and also a veracity bond system. So if somebody in the media lies and it's discovered and a marketplace for truth exists, then what can happen is the bond that they've posted for that article that they've written can basically be taken. Veracity bonds. It's a pretty magical thing, because when New York Times says we stand behind our words and our articles, I'll say, okay, if you are proven to be wrong about the Hunter Biden laptop, or you're proven to be wrong about pick your favorite thing, are you prepared to lose $1 million over that article you've just published? No. So you're confident, but you're only confident when it's free and it's your brand, which you, of course, will always say is awesome. But you're not confident when there's real money on the line. That's a little different. So veracity bonds are a big deal, and also having marketplaces for truth are a big deal. But that's only going to get you about halfway there. You actually need also a cognitive framework for architecting information. And I've been looking for one, and lo and behold, I found something that's quite interesting. And we're trying to reach out to these guys. Let me bring up the video for these guys. Unsupervised learning. Daniel Meisler. Let me present my screen. Just a moment. Do. Bum 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 bum. Wow! Here we go. And he has this lovely video. I'll post a link right here for you guys. And I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but what I am saying is that this is an example of a cognitive framework. And there's a GitHub repository that's associated. And what this framework basically does is it has a way of creating a hierarchy of anything that you see. So you have ideas, problems, beliefs, models, frames, solutions, information sources, people, organizations, laws, claims, votes, arguments, finding sources, lobbyists, missions, donations, goals, these types of things. And Daniel actually wrote a companion article about this, introducing Substrate, an open source framework for understanding human meaning. And it's hot off the press. It's July 2024. See, you guys always get the good shit when I'm talking. And he kind of goes through this whole thing about Substrate. So here are some examples. Problem name, toxic drinking water in poor US towns. And you can put an ID on it, and then you can kind of break it down. You can look at arguments here like, I don't know why you recycle, man. It's a total waste. It costs so much to recycle right now, and the programs are poorly run, so it's not actually benefiting the environment. Like, I'd do it if it worked, but it doesn't. So then what you can do is actually break the entire argument down into a dolphin diagram. Yeah, it doesn't look like they gave me a high-res visualization of that. But this is a Mermaid JF, excuse me. And basically breaks the entire argument down. You can look through the argument step by step, and then you can try to get an understanding of it. And so the claim inflation fell 2% during the term includes argument, includes consumer confidence improved. These are your sources. Now, combine this with AI, and that's the other missing piece. So I think veracity bonds, prediction markets, a cognitive framework like something like Substrate, which Daniel put together, and then combine that with large language models. And I do believe you have a major meta protocol, because then what you can do is you can take information and you can inject it into the system. You can basically frame it up, and then you can talk all about it, and then you can inject it back to whatever the source network was, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, what have you. And so this would work really well as a browser extension. And then basically people can see in the UX whether it's verified or unverified, and then they can put bounties up for things that they want to know. Is this generative AI, or do we fact check this, or these types of things? So there's all kinds of stuff you can do, and actually artificial intelligence can help tremendously in basically just kind of reasoning about all of this stuff. So for example, okay, here's a little exercise we can do. So let's go to Claude, I'll show you guys something. And let me just grab a little meme. And I'm going to dry run this real quickly just to verify it works. Sometimes Claude gets a little weird. Fact check this picture. Yes, okay. So let me show you guys a little something. All right. Present this screen again. Wow. All right. This is an electric vehicle. To manufacture, you need 12 tons of rock for lithium, 5 tons of cobalt minerals, 3 tons of minerals for nickel, 12 tons of copper ore, move 250 tons of soil to obtain the following things, the Caterpillar, and finally you get a zero emissions car. So put into Claude, and you can say, okay, fact check this picture. All right, and I'll check the key claims made in this image. Battery composition, all these indeed use exact qualities can vary significantly. Mining requirements claim about 250 tons of small amount of metals. Oversimplification. The fuel consumption, zero emissions claim applies to zero. It's partially true, while EVs predict the overall environmental impact. And you see there's a AI system, and it has a bias in it. And Claude is particularly woke. So Grok is coming out, version 2.0. OpenAI is probably going to release GPT-5, I think, in the next 4 to 6 weeks. You have Llama. These are different agents. They're different models. And what you can do with an agentic workflow is you can take that image, you can put it in, and you can have a discussion with the LLM, and you can say, okay, well, start sourcing all these things. And let's start working back and forth. And what's really true, and what's the meta argument that they're trying to make? That a battery powered car is not as sustainable as people are making it out to be, and in some cases less sustainable overall in terms of energy consumption for its production than perhaps the lifetime of an ICE car. We can actually derive to a point where we get there. You don't have to be a subject matter expert. If you have the right tools, workflow, and cognitive framework, you can get to a point where you start deriving some notion of truth. We see this starting to form with community notes actually in X, where people assert something, you get community noted, and then there's a collectiveness about coming up with the truth. It's expensive and hard to debunk things. And even if you do, people tend to believe it. The lie. For example, somebody just wanted to fuck with JD Vance, and so they made up that he had sex with a couch. And it's percolated its way through, and there's all these people that now think that JD Vance, in his book, said he had sex with a couch. And even the vice presidential candidate that Kamala Harris has picked said, JD Vance needs to get up off the couch, just to make fun of him for that. The right is now trying to do the same thing, saying that Waltz drank horse semen. Misinformation spreads, and people choose to believe it because they dislike the person, or they already believe it, and it confirms their bias, and they don't look much further. It's time consuming to take an idea, put it in a framework like Substrate, and it's time consuming to fact check things. It's time consuming to do all this. The more you can automate, the better. And the more you can move to marketplaces and gamify it so that people make money for discovering the truth or lose money for lying. I think that's the way you solve the problem. Thoughts on Perplexity? It's the true Google killer. If it keeps evolving, it keeps growing, and they keep pushing what they do. It's a tremendously useful tool. It's not quite where it needs to be yet. And I'm deeply concerned about misaligned large language models where they basically prevent you from knowing something for your own good. I think it's a really bad deal. Charles, you are trash. Well, thank you, sir. See what I was saying about the avatars? Where is Plutus backend? Well, what does that even mean? UPC? Plutus runs, you fucking idiot. People build on it. There's hundreds of dApps. There's Aiken, and there's TypeScript, and there's Plutus HS. Compiles to UPC. It runs on Cardano. We're just about to hit the 3rd version. You must be the application backend, which was deprecated because it's not useful. But because you live online and you have no understanding or context, and somebody told you from another community that that was a missed promise, you have no clue that that was unnecessary. So you ask about it. Why? Because you think you're going to get a reaction. But now you've been publicly shamed. You see? And this is what people do. Software development, product development is a serpentine thing. You start with a brand, a product idea, you start with something, and you end somewhere else. At the end of the day, what matters is, are you solving problems? And let's answer a fundamental question. Is the DevX of Cardano today in August 2024 better than September of 2021? Yes, exponentially so, as evidenced by the people building, as evidenced by the things you can do, and the dApps that are actually running in the ecosystem. So we honored the commitment. We built it. We did it. But you didn't deliver this one thing over there. Well, actually, all those things that we wanted to do ended up in different parts, and they're more useful and actually practical in those different parts. So why would you continue following a failed roadmap? You wouldn't. You pivot. That's what product development is about. But you can't get there, can you? Because you're looking for something to criticize. And you're trying to push a narrative that we don't deliver when actually we deliver better than anybody else in the entire ecosystem. Magical. Debate me, bro. Any updates on Midnight? Go to midnight.network. Every day they're pumping stuff out. It's actually coming along. It's one of our best projects. Charles, are you coming to Dubai this year? Yes, I'm a keynote speaker at the Foundation Summit. What inspired you to adopt a peer-reviewed approach for Cardano's development? There's two reasons. One, we thought it was really important in a world where people lie, in a world where people make misleading claims about capabilities, to ground your capabilities in reality. And you do that with an independent third-party objective process. So that's one very, very important thing, especially journalists, because they could say, okay, well, Solana's claiming this with Fire Dancer, and Vitalik is claiming this with the latest and greatest thing with Dank sharding, and this guy over here in Swedes saying this, and this Aptos guy is saying this, and the Algorand guy is saying this, and Cardano says this. Well, how do I know if I'm not a computer scientist with 20 years of experience what's real and not? Can't read the code? Well, this peer review process developed the protocols behind Cardano, and members of the academic community who are objective and neutral and have no financial incentive one way or the other have made a decision that these protocols are sound. So maybe that's a good foundation upon which we can base some truth from. So that was one reason, is that we wanted some objectivity and checks and balances in the system. The more important reason is we need a decentralized brain. People build cults of personality around a founder. Vitalik is so brilliant. Yeah, Satoshi is God. This person's incredible. Charles is terrible. And the thing is that if you are only as smart as your founder, and all your innovation comes from your founder's brain, what happens when your founder retires, dies, or gets compromised? You're fucked. If you have peer review, what do? You're creating a decentralized innovation factory. We have labs at Stanford, CMU, University of Wyoming, University of Edinburgh. We have University of Athens, Tokyo Institute of Technology. Go through the list. 168 people across all of it. And now more than 200 plus papers, 10,000 plus citations. What does that mean? 5, 10, 15 years, should the community want to continue funding that decentralized brain, it has a faceless innovation engine that is global. There's no founder. Okay, you can't compromise it, you can't manipulate it, can't bend it, because it's all across the entire world, and it has everybody's innovation. That's the magic of that. So why would you throw it away? Oh, because we want to be first to market and all this stuff. Great. First to market, first to lose your money. All right, we're just going to go ahead and ban the user and delete their comments. How about that? It's called God mode, yo. Will Midnight really be interoperable with Cardano? Yes. I love these people who spread FUD. Cardano is launching Midnight. Cardano is built so well, you can launch the fourth generation cryptocurrency from it. How about that? It's pretty magical. Hey, Charles, haircut looks good. This is the jungle cut. That's what you get with the machete. Is there any similarities between the trolley cart thought experiment and the blockchain trilemma? No. If you accept the trilemma about scalability and so forth, and the trade-offs of it, you don't have to. You of course would have a trolley problem because you're going to go down one of the tracks, and you have to pick two of the three, right? Ouroboros Leos pretty much resolves the blockchain trilemma, in my view. Charles, are you left-handed or just left-eye dominant? Left-handed. Scalability, decentralization, and security, my friend. How is Nike? Nike's good. He's a good pick. Hey, Charles, I'm extremely bullish on Cardano. Would you mind providing any updates regarding U.S. state voting or other voting use cases in Cardano? We have the raw capabilities, and with Midnight, that go far beyond anything anybody's ever done in e-voting. The fundamental challenge of voting is its two components. There's the voting component, which is the mechanics of how you run an election, presupposing that you've identified and qualified the people who are allowed to participate and how much weight they have. In America, we have this concept of equal voting. In corporations, you have a concept of shareholder voting, where the more shares, the more power you have, as an example of your vote weighting. Okay. What Cardano Midnight do for you, give you the best platform you've ever seen to do your voting on, whatever the ballot architecture is, plurality or preference sorting or whatever. Okay. The other side of the equation is the identity side of how do you actually decide who is eligible to vote? And so I will not take a single state deal or RFP to build a blockchain-based voting system unless in that RFP there's an opportunity to also update and modernize the state's identity system. Because all you're going to do if you don't do that is you're building the world's most secure system to cheat. Because if a non-citizen can register, or a person ineligible can register, or a dead person can register, we'll very securely and accurately count the vote of that person who shouldn't be voting. But we've solved nothing. So you need to actually tackle both of them at the same time. We need DIDs and self-sovereign identity, and we need to kind of build out that corpus. And then it becomes quite trivial to do voting systems because you just take best available, you put it in, and once people register with their DIDs and they go in, and then the election gives them the voting power accordingly. So, yeah, it's both sides of the equation, and a lot of people don't fully understand that when they talk about voting, nor should they, because it's a hard topic and concept. But then it's very intuitive once you really start racking your brain and you say, "Oh, actually, that's a good point. We need to redo the identity system." They don't want to redo the identity system because that's a whole can of worms. They say, "Oh, well, that means the government will spy on you," like the NSA doesn't. That's their argument against updating a digital identity system. Well, we don't want that because that'll somehow give the government more powers to spy on you when it's literally listening to your phone conversations. So there you go. What's your opinion on the Ripple SEC case, and what's your opinion on how the case's outcome affects crypto in general? Judge kept the line, basically said, sell it one way, it's a security, sell it another way, apparently it's not a security. Doesn't give much clarity, and Ripple's pretty much through it. There'll be some appeals, but all things considered, I think they just want to move on. They 125 million, okay. 300 million in legal fees, probably 425 million for clarity on their part. Healthcare question. Have you explored integration with Athena Health, Cerner, Epic? Epic is the most frustrating because they don't work with clinics, and we've tried to get them as our own EHR. So we use Athena at the clinic, and they're pretty gnarly to integrate with, and everything just takes time and effort. But we're getting there. And yeah, we're absolutely interested in building a Midnight module in particular, and seeing if we can combine fully homomorphic encryption with Midnight and then plug that into an EHR. So I'm still doing stuff with it, so I don't have much to say, but it's something I spend time thinking about, actually. Exactly. Keyman risk. This guy gets it. If you believe in decentralization, no matter how much you love somebody, plan for them not to be there. You have to get rid of keyman risk, or else you're completely dependent on somebody showing up. And you can't do that for our economic, political, and social systems. Humans die. It always happens eventually. So plan for succession. Hey, Charles, greetings from the Netherlands. Wishing you all the best. The president of Input Output, Tamar Hassan, is actually of Dutch descent. We talk about the Netherlands quite a bit. It's a wonderful place, actually. I really do enjoy it. One of the best put together countries I've ever been to. Yeah, I get that, but ADA's been at 30 cents for 3 years. First, that's not true. You're exaggerating. And second, welcome crypto. There's no correlation between progress and price. That's the first lesson you have to learn in crypto. Welcome to crypto. There's no correlation. And if you start believing there is one, that somehow magically the price goes up when people do good things, you're going to lose a lot of money. It's random. It's stochastic. Nike goes to 15 million. What was the utility there? What does it mean there? It's a good pig. It's pretty much it. Other things, they're amazing. They're technological marvels, ergo, they just languish. Why? It's crypto. There's no connection between these two. But then you try to construct a connection. And when you do that, then you say, well, obviously the people have the wrong strategy. Is extended UTXO the wrong strategy long term? Are we going to live in a world where the dominance is layer twos and side chains and legacy systems connecting to blockchain? Well, isn't Vitalik saying that? Isn't the entire Bitcoin space embracing that because it can't change the underlying protocol? Cardano is the best in the world for this paradigm because of the extended UTXO model. So was that the wrong decision? We're creating better developer accessibility. People just lie. They say, oh, I can't do Haskell, and Haskell's weird, so I can't develop on Cardano. What about Aiken? What about TypeScript? Oh, well, I didn't even know you could do that. Huh. Interesting. So but price down. So that's the only thing that matters. That's the problem, guys. You got to slay that demon early. You're in it to either change the economic, political, and social systems of the world, or you're in it to be somebody else's fool. That's the only options you got. We're either going to change the world, or this is the world's biggest Ponzi scheme. When we talk about cryptocurrencies in general, there's no middle ground here. There's no point in handing power of crypto to centralized actors and having those actors own all the money, custody it. You don't own your own wallet. You don't own your own identity. You don't own your data, and you don't have any control or say. And every single thing you do has to go through government compliance. There was no point to what we do. There's no difference then between this and PayPal, and this and Chase, and this and BlackRock. There's none, zero, zilch. So what have we achieved? What have we built? What have we done? What was the last 15 years about? To make a rich banker a little richer? To make your wire transfer clear a little faster? To move some money around so that a few people won the lottery and they got rich? Meanwhile, 99% of society is still impoverished and living in these horrible inflationary economies that robbed us every day. Maybe the point was all along decentralization and resilience and taking back our money and taking back our political systems and taking back our social systems so that we live in freedom. What's the price of that? What's the market cap of that? You tell me. How much would you be willing to trade to live in a free society where you don't have to be afraid about being arrested for making the wrong Facebook post or deplatformed and fired and gulagged if you run afoul of the wrong political structure, or your money turned off, like all the people in China are going to have to learn to live with social credit merging with their digital CBDC. That's a reality for billions of people right now. So tell me, number go up is the only thing that matters, huh? Why are you even in crypto then? Just play the lottery. Why Cardano was not written in Rust? Because we started in 2015, and Rust was a very primitive, immature language. Haskell was created in 1985. It had a long legacy. Second, we started with research papers. Research papers are significantly easier to translate into a purely functional language like Haskell, which kind of looks like math when you look at the syntax. And we built up Haskell to be an amazing development language. And we've gotten to a point where there's a vibrant ecosystem and we're able to use formal methods well. We do use Rust in Cardano, in particular in the cryptography. Rust has replaced any C++, and it's a wonderful language. And there are people building Cardano nodes in Rust. Pragma is an example of that. And the entire partner chains framework of Cardano is written in Rust. So more misinformation, huh? When is the Alien documentary coming out? Jason has got to release it. He filmed us like, what was it, a year and a half ago in Papua New Guinea? And I haven't heard any updates of when it's shipping. But he'll get there. He took the money, so he's got to release the Netflix special. And I'll let you guys know when we have a release date. Hey, Charles, is it true Solana's faking TPS? Depends on who you talk to. Above my pay grade. Why have you not been on Joe Rogan yet? Well, we'll get there. I mean, what's the rush? Joe's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure it out. Kennedy, sir. Kennedy. But Kennedy is a remedy. Italy is trash, only good for food. Ooh, damn, are fighting words, sir. Fighting words. Italy is one of the nicest and most beautiful places in the world. Hey, brother, seems to be Ben Bitboy doesn't love you anymore. No, we didn't give him money. So now he's on the other side of his arc. He's gone the Rand Newer way. So he and Rand and Max Kaiser, they're all going to get together and, they're going to have a little bit of a lemon party and, there'll be some videos on the internet about it. Get all oiled up. Yeah, there you go. And then he'll challenge me to a fight. And when we don't take the bait, he'll go and find some tier 4 podcaster to go beat up a little bit and feel really good about it. He'll feel good about himself. What's with the clinic and stem cell lab? Well, Dr. Lesser, legendary quadruple board certified cardiologist, very brilliant man, one of the smartest men actually I've ever met. We are making phenomenal progress. Stem cell lab will be operational as of September. It's been a long road, a lot of work. These guys are kicking ass. And hyperbarics program, we're starting with monoplace chambers just to prime the pump. We have 2 that we're taking custody of. They're going to be shipped down here, Colorado, after we have the multi-place chamber fully operational in April. And then we'll run the clinical trials in Wyoming with the multi-place chamber, and the stem cells will be made in Wyoming. And then we'll expand the trial once we clear the first FDA trial, phase 1. We're doing phase 1-2 combined. And then there'll be a phase 3 trial that we run if the data looks good. And then we're going to have to expand those cohorts likely to Colorado, Florida, and Wyoming. We should have a power of about 600 there inside the study. So we're doing very well. Multi-specialty practice, 9,000 patients. It's growing by leaps and bounds. The hope is to be at 15,000 actually by the end of 2025. I think the last time anybody was crazy enough to set up a family-owned and operated multi-specialty medical practice was Mayo Clinic. And it's interesting, it was father-son team, and the son was named Charles William Mayo. And I'm Charles, and my brother's William. So history doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes, doesn't it? I hear Trump needs stem cells and needs to talk about it. You know, the best part about my stem cells, and this is an ethical thing for me, the stem cells that we're developing are mesenchymal stem cells, adipose-derived mesenchymal stem cells. So take the fat out, spin it, extract it, culture it, bioreactor it, and re-inject. There's an unlimited supply. What we take is what we use and grow. And there's no ethical issues. There's a lot of people that are pushing pluripotent stem cells that come from fetal tissue. And it just makes me deeply uncomfortable, this idea that there's going to, because if it takes off and becomes a big thing, the supply will be not large enough to satisfy the demand. So people are going to go out of their way to basically create fertilization factories to make these cells. And it's not ethical in my view, and never will be ethical in my view. But mesenchymal stem cells, they're from you. They take them out of your fat, your blood, your bone marrow, and it's pretty straightforward for how to do that. So I love that approach. And I think combined with hyperbarics, they're just as effective, if not more so. You don't have that tumor risk that you have with induced pluripotent stem cells, which is like the biggest thing that people are pushing right now, iPSC, those whole Yamanaka factors you're chasing. But that's a long road, and I don't think you're going to get FDA approval for a long time for that. How do the partner chains interact with Cardano and each other? There's bridges between the partner chain and the main chain, and long-term goal is to make sure those bridges are recursive snarks, which means they're trustless and bidirectional. Ouroboros Paris is being built, so there's fast finality on both sides. So it's near instant to move a trustless transaction of value and information between both. The hybrid application model that Midnight's pioneering, which is backported to the partner chains framework, means that you can build applications where code runs on both sides and they call each other. Transactions go back and forth. Typically, it's a two-token model where one token was going to live on the main chain, Cardano, as a native asset, and your fuel is going to live on the partner chain. One usually has a fixed or deflationary monetary policy. The other one has floating that gives you predictable pricing for the service on the partner chain. And the Cardano SPOs basically validate the partner chain blocks. So they get paid the inflation, and by extension goes back to the ADA holders. It's a pretty elegant, beautiful system, which will allow Cardano to extend itself to the entire industry and be the biggest decentralized app provider to the industry. Very excited about it. And it's just one of many of our innovations that we're working on in parallel for a supposedly dead ecosystem. I've heard that Midnight Validator No requires SPOs run DB sync. We're trying to get rid of that dependency altogether for everything. And we're working really hard at cleaning a lot of this dirty laundry up. So don't worry about these things long term. What does your brother do? My brother is a doctor of internal medicine. Charles, will anyone ever be held accountable for all the damage that was done in this life or the next? Karma always comes back. Looking forward to the Cardano Summit. I am too, sir. Charles, what's this stuff about Hydra and Doom? If you want to find out, you have to come to Rare Evo. We got some Hydra Doom stuff. Any update on Ouroboros Paris? Reading the GitHub docs recently. Looks exciting. We're working on the SIP at the moment. The prototyping is nearly done. What's going to happen is the paper and the prototype are going to land at the same time. We're basically finished with Ouroboros Genesis. There's a little bit more cleanup to do. What we want is Tweak, who implemented Genesis, to kind of roll over and start the implementation of Paris, and they're waiting on the last details of the SIP so we can get that bootstrap from Genesis and fast finality inside the system. You give up your guns after voting Kennedy in? So he's just going to get rid of all our guns, right? You can come house to house, kick in the door, take your gun away. He's in the center, which means everybody gives up a little bit. And we need that right now. Believe me, I would love a libertarian like Ron Paul to be president of the United States. Everybody hates each other. Everybody's angry. And it's getting worse and worse. And we're not listening to each other. You need a fucking reset. You need somebody to come in, takes a little bit of the left, a little bit of the right, mixes it in, and says he's going to be a moderate and run it down the stream. His uncle was, and America needs that right now. Does that mean we compromise on all our principles? Does that mean we throw away the Constitution? Does that mean we allow them to amend the Constitution, remove fundamental American rights? No, and we have institutions. Supreme Court's not going anywhere. The difference is you have somebody who has compassion and actually wants to heal the country and talks about the real problems the country has. $35 trillion of national debt. It's not a fucking number. It means that more than half of every dollar we collect right now in income taxes goes to pay the interest on that debt. That's what that means. And if we continue this, by the end of the decade, 100% of every dollar we collect in tax revenue will go to pay the interest on the debt. That's what that number means. When you look at things, for example, like the health of America, when Kennedy's uncle was the president of the United States, 6% of America had a chronic ailment or a mental illness. Now it's over 60% of America. More than half suffer from some debilitation that considerably compromises the quality of their lives. We got microplastics all throughout our bodies. Our fertility has plummeted as a species. People's happiness is in the toilet. Meaning is in the toilet. That's an important existential issue to America. When you line two people up, any pairing, and at least one of them has something wrong with them, there's a public health crisis, which costs currently $4 trillion a year to manage. And I'm going to run out of fingers soon for the trillions it's going to cost as we get deeper into the 21st century. The wars, they never stop. We lose them now, and we keep having them. We traded Iraq and Ukraine. We traded Iraq and Afghanistan for Ukraine and Israel, not to mention all the other things that are coming. And we're getting ready for the big one. We're barreling towards World War III. These are big issues. And you know what? They require leadership. They require somebody to come and rally people, not the 50% of America that you happen to fucking agree with, but the 100% of America, because we're all in this boat together, whether we like it or not. Whether you like your shipmates or not, we're all Americans. Somebody has to rally the people and get them to believe in something again and get them to start tackling these incredibly hard problems that we have. That's why you need somebody in the center. And that's why you need to bring people together. And you've been lied to and told every election is the most important election of our lifetime. And the only thing you're allowed to do is vote for the lesser of two evils. And the person on the other side is literally Hitler. They're pure evil and they should die. And they, if elected, will destroy every person alive and throw us all in death camps. That's what you're told. Every fucking election cycle. And if your guy wins, oh, thank God we dodged the bullet. America will be great again. Meanwhile, we get sicker. The wars don't stop. The debt continues to grow. That's a fact. And the corporatism is still here. Corporations still run everything. You're fucking naive and stupid if you think for a moment that we're not owned and dominated by Fortune 500 companies and their power and control over the world around us. We have to stop it. And that means you have to do something crazy like elect an independent. Elect somebody a little different, because what you're doing is you're saying, I don't consent to this anymore. I don't consent to the two-party system. I don't consent to the world being the way it is. I don't consent to people being sicker around me. I don't consent to my money being worthless. I don't consent to unlimited foreign engagements. I want to reset. Are you still fasting? Yes, starting a fast today. Just drinking my coffee. Hey, Charles, can you please do an update to the security video? Yeah, I know it's on the list. I got to get around to it. I'm sorry. What about the military-industrial complex? Cut that too. Oh, my Lord, nothing bothers me more than it. They say, protect our troops. Give our troops what they need. Meanwhile, they do the F-35, spend $1 trillion. Did anybody ask for it? The Frankenstein's monster of planes, close air support, long-term strategic bomber, everything all in one. Doesn't work, doesn't do anything well. Oh, well, you got to build another one then. There you go. Meanwhile, the guy actually in the field who's been deployed is using, when we first started, this Vietnam era stuff. And now they kind of have hand-me-downs from Iraq, and they say, wow, we spent all our money on these super high tech planes that don't work and we can't fly. And the guys who actually get shot at get nothing. And we don't take care of them after they get shot. That's the military-industrial complex in a nutshell. Ukraine is the wet dream of wars for them because there's no political consequences. You don't actually have to send troops in. Somebody else dies, in this case, Ukrainians. And there'll probably be another 500,000 to 1 million before it's all said and done. And meanwhile, hundreds of billions of dollars of American military hardware gets pushed into Ukraine. Now the inventory gets low. So what do the generals do? They go to Congress and they say, Congress, we're out of X, Y, and Z. We just need to buy more. And actually, while we're at it, why don't we buy the new stuff? We got the new Abrams X for all those Abrams we sent out. We need to replace them with the state-of-the-art Abrams X. It's a great platform, 5 times more expensive. Got all the bells and whistles. Well, we got to defend the country. Let's go buy 50 of those newfangled Abrams X's. Oh, and Congressman, we learned from the use of these weapons that they're not prepared, for a near power conflict with Russia or China. Oh, what do we do then, General? Well, I think we need to upgrade with the new kits from BAE and Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. It's only $180 billion. So that $300 billion worth of hardware we gave them turns into $500 billion to $1 trillion worth of military procurement. How about that? Wow. You feel like we're winning? Yeah. We're really making it work. Meanwhile, Putin's still going to be president of Russia after it's all said and done, and they're probably going to hold on to the territory that they took. Just like when you look at Vietnam, 1968 to 1973. We had a peace deal on the table. Kissinger came in and I think we could do a little better, Mr. President. And so he pushed it a little bit. We spent another 5 years rolling the dice and fighting it. You know what happened? 1.1 million Vietnamese died. 21,000 American troops died, not to mention the countless wounded. And we spent $700 billion to sign the same peace deal that we had on the table in 1968. 5 years. What the fuck did we learn? What did we do? Are we there yet? We really figuring this out? You ever going to hear this on the mainstream media? You ever going to hear that on CNN, at Fox News, MSNBC, these things? No. Propaganda. We don't talk about history because history is inconvenient if a person's trying to rob you. History is inconvenient if a person is trying to hurt you. Because with history, you get wisdom. And with wisdom, you can't get took. It's not for the Ukrainians to decide on the border they can live with. It's really not. As long as they take our money, our weapons, and they get our support from NATO, we have a say. If they want to fight a war completely alone, they have a say. That's the fact. That's how that works. It's our blood and treasure. It's our decision as a people of what we're willing to tolerate and what we're going to do. If Ukrainians don't like it, well, they can choose to fight without our support. That's called an alliance. We had to make this decision with the Gulf War. We invade, we take back Kuwait, we kick the Iraqis out. We had built a coalition. The Secretary of Defense of the United States of America wanted to continue pushing to Baghdad and have regime change. That was Dick Cheney back then with George H.W. Bush. And the Saudis and others who were in the alliance said, we will not support regime change. So we said, you know what? We'll just sanctions and mission accomplished. We'll go home. That is what an alliance means. You have gives and takes. And if you take someone's support, you have to accept the borders. You have to accept things. The Yalta Conference was another example. 1945, as we closed out the World War II, the Soviets spent an enormous amount of blood and treasure. And we had to make some decisions about how to chop up Europe. And the Soviets want to take the whole thing. And we made some decisions there. And unfortunately, FDR was a poor negotiator because he was dying. Literally died, I think, a week or two after the conference. Gave him Poland. Shouldn't have done it. They had to live under tyranny for decades as a direct result, despite the fact they fought really hard. Now tell me, how much of a say did Poland have on their sovereignty there? The great powers decided. And that's what happens to small countries when they get caught up in conflicts with great powers. And that's why we created the United Nations and these types of things, to try to give some sort of sovereignty back to little countries. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. And in practice, things get challenging. And Ukraine has been a MacGuffin that's been in the geopolitical lexicon since the Soviet Union collapsed. And there's been lots of discussions on both sides about spheres of influence. The NATOification of Europe is another example of that. 2000, there was 20 NATO countries. Now there are 31, soon to be 32. And what does that translate to? Translates to the US and NATO getting closer and closer and closer to Russia. And Russia made a hard line saying, if you try to get Ukraine to join NATO, we will not allow US nuclear weapons to be 200 miles away from Moscow. Just like we wouldn't allow nuclear weapons from Russia to be in Cuba. It is a hard line. And also, we need access to the Black Sea. We're not going to lose these ports. We're not going to lose this economic geopolitical influence. And we said, well, how about you join NATO? And then a war breaks out. We said, we just don't know where the war came from. We have no clue about it, even though they've been talking about this for 20 fucking plus years. Actually, since 1986, when Reagan and Gorbachev got together in Reykjavik, when they were discussing behind the scenes that they were going to withdraw from East Germany and reunify Germany, and kind of hammering out the breakup of the Soviet Union, because the writing was on the wall for this. And people wanted to manage the collapse without World War III happening, because a third of the planet was going to be under new management within 5 years. Think about how complicated that is. Foreign policy and geopolitics, very complicated. And what makes it so hard is that people don't get the truth. What they do is they get the surface level propaganda discussion of it that's laced and burdened with whoever benefits from it. War is tremendously profitable for some and horrific for many, which is why you shouldn't have them. And it's why you should always sue for peace where and when it's possible. And you have to be very clear about what you're willing to do. What's the mission in Ukraine? You tell me, Robert. Is it regime change? Are we going to go kill Putin? Then who do we replace him with? Is it restoring the borders before the war broke out? The 2014 borders, the 2007 borders, 1991, I think, when they came back. I mean, what territories are going to be seceded? Is Crimea is going to come back? What are we doing here? Will Russians have free entry into Ukraine like they used to? And will they be able to go on vacation again in Odessa? Or now they're persona non grata? Is there any protections that are going to come to the territories that are re-annexed with the Eastern Ukrainians who speak Russian and collaborated with the Russian government? Or will they be ethnically cleansed? Are they going to have to go back to Russia? So are they going to be kicked out of the homes that they grew up in Ukraine? Because now there's radicalized people on the Western side who speak Ukrainian, and they feel the people in the East betrayed their country and are collaborators and should be executed and beaten to death. Kind of reminds you of Iraq, doesn't it? With the Victor's Justice and the Shia when they took over, and they were really angry at all those Ba'ath Party Sunnis. It's really complicated now. Wow, there's a lot of moving pieces to this, isn't there? Oh no, and that's war. There's a lot of moving pieces. It's very challenging, and it really is hard when people work through it. And you have to look at the whole map. And you have to have a vision, and you have to understand, what are we actually doing here? What is the mission? And if you can't answer it, here's what you're doing. You're buying time with the lives of young people. Every month this goes on, tens of thousands of people die. And if you get the same outcome we could have gotten in 2022, before Boris Johnson was sent to fuck it all up, then all those people who died, they died just like people in World War I for nothing. There was no regime change. There was no magical embrace of freedom. They died for nothing. The borders stayed exactly the same. And will the politicians be punished? No, they'll get their Nobel Peace Prize. They'll get their beautiful chalet in Geneva. They'll be able to write a tell-all book. The villains will stay villains. The heroes will stay heroes. And both sides get to say that they won. That's what you get. Unless you're prepared to go all the way. And that includes up to and including a nuclear war. And if you're prepared for that, okay, there we go. Let's do it. It's World War III. Huzzah. That's where the world's at. Dude, I listened to your Trump speech reaction video. I always avoided every information about the man since 2016. Heard him for the first time. It's incredibly how deep a nation can fall. You know, the thing that bothered me so much about that speech was just the lack of information. Trump, as he gets older, his signal to noise is he's always been too verbose, and there's really not a lot of signal there in the noise. In other words, there's not a lot of content. There's a boatload of fluff. Believe me, there's this word salad wrapped around kind of a thin point that's being made. The dude walks into a blockchain conference. He had maybe 5 minutes of policy and talking points and 45 minutes of bluster. And inside the speech, he's talking about his uncle, who's an MIT professor, and he's talking about this and that, not relevant at all to crypto. And there could have been so many wins. He could have just gone through the hits. He could have been like, what Gary Gensler did to XRP is wrong. What Gary's doing to all you guys is wrong. We're going to end choke point. We're going to end this. We're going to do this. DeFi is the future. And it would have been great to show humility there. And he'd say, I'm an old guy. This is a young man's game. And we can't destroy the young innovators because they're the ones who run the economic engine. Just couldn't show that. And that made me sad. Because it's the first time a major political party has embraced cryptocurrency. And if you want to contrast, take a look at Kennedy's speech, the Trump speech, and the specifics that Kennedy put in, from the strategic Bitcoin reserve to all these other things, specific policy positions. And he kind of walked through. That was what I was hoping for, that somebody would write that speech for him. He'd come in and show it. I mean, his kids claim that they know cryptocurrencies. You got Don Jr. saying he's going to open up a DeFi platform. If you're so sophisticated that you're capable of building a DeFi platform, doing tokenomics, successfully launching that and making that a real product, shouldn't you have enough knowledge then to be able to articulate cryptocurrency policy? And he's got Vivek. Vivek's a great guy. He's very smart. And he actually had a kind of a bill of rights for crypto that he came up with in his campaign. So it would have been sufficient for him to just go up there and be like, I'm going to have Vivek be the crypto czar, and he's going to figure it all out. He's so good. I appoint the best people, believe me. Didn't do that. And that's a bad thing. He literally said on the first day you'd fire Gary Gensler and get all giddy. Yes, and that's an example of one statement that was great. But guys, it's a long speech. And why have a long speech filled with a word salad? Be concise and precise. You don't have to be there for 45 minutes. You could be there for a quick 5-10 minute speech and say, I have another thing in Minnesota, but I love you guys and I want to explain what's going on. And you end strong in this type of thing. And yeah, any idiot who comes in to say like, yeah, Gary's got to be fired. Unfortunately, the president doesn't have the power to unilaterally do that. His term ends in 2026. So he can't fire him on day one. He can ask for his resignation, but he can't actually fire him on day number one. That's an example of a Trumpism. He says he's going to do it, but it's a check he can't cash. Traditionally, chairmen have offered resignations for presidents, and they can choose to accept or reject it. So hopefully Gary follows in line if Trump wins. But we have no guarantee of that. And he can choose to wait it out, as Hester, for example, has done under the Biden administration, where she was appointed by Trump, as an example. Is Atala Prism the DID that will be leveraged by Midnight, or is the DApp builders to choose the DID of their choice? So DIDs are standard, so choose whatever you want. The Prism framework is our preferred framework because it's the most evolved and it's built hand in glove. But it's just like Hydra on Cardano, where you can use Hydra, or you can have an alternative Hydra or an alternative approach for how you want to achieve layer 2 scalability. Here, can I please ask a question here? Yes, you can, Bruno. What you got for us? When do you think China is going to take Taiwan? Probably around 2027. That's what the Pentagon thinks. They write this report every year, and you can see China making gradual progress. Charles wears a mask alone in his truck. You MAGA guys. Hi, Charles. I love Cardano. Good luck. Well, thank you so much, sir. We love you too. Should we build a crypto nation? Kind of feels like we are. Writing a constitution. We just elected the ICC, got the D-reps coming. That's pretty good, man. He said what the audience there wanted him to say. Believe me. What do you think about the 1801 vote mechanism? It's a good starting point. It's not the end point. That's why we call it minimum viable governance. I think we need multiple resource pools long term and different ballot mechanisms long term to build the perfect government. But you start somewhere and you look for integrity, efficacy, and efficiency. Okay? So efficacy is how good the decisions end up being for the system. Efficiency is how quickly you make them. And integrity is, do you protect the rights of everybody or just some people? So you use those as your rating mechanism, and it gives you a good sense of whether the governance system is working or not. Charles, how you doing health-wise and everything? A little overweight, but getting there. And I'm just kind of pushing through. Do not ever shave again. Oh, Hosky. You guys like the beard length right now? Is that pretty good? Is that working for you? When is the boxing match between you and Vitalik happening? Joe Rogan can be the ref. Well, first, it would be a huge event, but no, it wouldn't be fair to Vitalik. He's not built for that. I can go between mathematician and intellectual and physical bro guy. Vitalik is not built for that. He's picked an aisle. Tesla turbines, Charles, they are viable. And I know the guy designing industrial grade ones for cooling and energy generation. I would really be interested in Tesla turbines, especially with magnetic bearings. That'd be pretty cool. You about to be on the wrong side of history, brother. You were so close. Fuck. Ugh. Ugh. Oh. Beard looks good. 1 inch minimum. That's what she said. There was a paper recently on lightweight ZK proofs. Have you read it? There are probably more than 50 papers recently on lightweight ZK proofs. Hey, Charles, my girlfriend has been suffering with heavy migraines all her life. No medical observation can find a reason or cure. Any advice you can give devices to try that may give her some peace? Try changing the diet. Talk to your nutritionist and doctor, but go over to keto for a little bit and see if that works. Sometimes people, there's a relationship between migraines and the microbiome and diet. And if you've kind of gotten to the bottom of the barrel, they've done the brain scans, they've gone through everything, and you can't find it, roll the dice on it and see if you get where you need to go. I knew a friend who actually had epilepsy and he went to a keto diet and it just worked wonders for him. And there's some other people that cleaned up their microbiome. They got rid of the seed oils and all their migraines went away. Unfortunately, the issue is that some cases you can't solve the problem. Oh my God, Wayne's Smoke Shack. I just realized they're open. Oh, yeah, all right. So after I finish all this, going to Wayne's. What type of music do you listen to when you work out? If it's a hardcore workout, you got to turn on the motivation stuff. If it's less of a hardcore workout, then you podcast. That's the way to go. Oh my God, Crypto Crow is here. Great man. I like Crypto Crow. He's actually coming to Rare Evo, and we're definitely going to do an interview together at the booth and talk about his game and all the stuff he's been working on. I've always enjoyed talking to him throughout all the years. There's a lot of real high integrity, good people in the Cardano ecosystem. He's an example of one. He's always been a steady hand. You are absolutely giving us a great afternoon. I don't do the AMAs enough. I really miss it. It's a lot of fun to be with you guys. How often do you exercise? Right now, every day. In fact, I'm getting jungle ready, guys. I'm getting my rucksack and going to be on the treadmill and take up the incline a little bit and just see me melt. All this fat is going away. You'll see. You'll see. Do you still do ice baths? This is for later today. Swim trunks for the ice bath. Got her downstairs, yo. When will Cardano support multiple programming languages? It already does. Marketing guys, I cannot wait for Intersect to actually have the damn budget and be able to put some money into marketing, because the level of misinformation and misunderstanding of the ecosystem, it kills me. Charles, when is your six-pack Brian Johnson anti-aging arc? Okay, so Brian is like a vampire, and I got a whole different thing going on than Brian. But I do know him. I have met him. He's a great guy, and I enjoy talking to him. But I'm not going to quite go and do gene therapies and Roatan from Mini Circle and all kinds of stuff like that. We're just going to do the stem cells and the hyperbarics and a little bit of jungle warfare. Turn on Goggins, Charles. It's funny because on my security detail, I got a Team 6 guy, and I asked him, what do you think of Goggins? He's like, I don't like Goggins. I don't know. I mean, if you guys are in the SEAL community, it's like Goggins in the in crowd, is in the out crowd. Because I heard if they send you to Ranger School as a SEAL, that's the punishment. But I'd never been in that culture, so I don't know what to believe. I found that a lot of these soft guys are just like hypercritical of each other. It's like there's no purity. I got a dry float tank actually on the way. I'm very excited about it. I'll show you guys this. It's a really cool system. Dry float tank. And you say, Charles, what the hell is a dry float tank? What is that about? And I said, well, I'm glad that you asked about my dry float tank. Okay. It's from Starpool. And somebody from their side is going to see this video. They're going to be like, oh my God, Charles talking about us. All right, let me bring this up. Share screen. Wow, here we go. So Starpool sells these. It's dry float therapy. It's super warm. It's almost like a water bed. You start on the platform. It lowers you in. And eventually you're just free floating deep inside this incredibly warm cocoon. Because the cocoon is on the other side of the plastic, you don't get wet. So I tried it at Dave Asprey's summit, the biohacking conference that he had, and God, it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I was like, man, this is going to give me the best sleep of my life. If it doesn't do the float tank thing, the sleep is going to be amazing for naps. But I'm going to grab it and do that. Because I have a float tank at the ranch, and that thing is hard to stay clean, man. And then you get out and you get all the salt all over you, and you got to wash it off, and you're like, oh. Why is Brian like a vampire? He literally took his son's blood and injected it into himself to slow down the aging process. Come on, man. That's as vampire as it gets. When are you going to have an X Base with RFK Jr. and or Nicole Shanahan? I'm setting something up, I think, for Rare Evo to do something with RFK, but we'll see. In an old AMA, he said in 2025, you'll be very happy. Are you still convinced about that affirmation? 100%. The roadmap's nearly done, guys. We know exactly what to do with Basho. You guys are going to be in charge of Cardano budget. You got an on-chain government. Voltaire is looking amazing. 2025 is our year. That is the first true decentralized nation. This is the first cryptocurrency to live up to the promise that Satoshi put on the table. We did it. We accomplished it. No one ever did that. Charles, why are you talking about non-interesting subjects when we as ADA holders and supporters of your project are in loss? I think you mean have taken losses since last time. What are you doing to reverse this? You don't understand. It's not my job. It's a decentralized protocol. Get it through your fucking head. Voltaire, what does it mean? You have an on-chain government. You want changes, do something. Become a D-Rep, join the ICC, join Intersect, talk. What should we do for marketing? What should we do for adoption? All these types of things. If you think a CEO is here to save you, you are talking about a centralized organization and company. You're talking about Microsoft, Google, Apple. That's not crypto. It's not a financial investment. It's about changing the economic, political, and social systems of the world. We built Cardano to be here for 100 years and change the nation states and change the world. That's who we are and what we do. You see, I talk about non-interesting subjects to you because the only thing you care about is price go up. It's my personal YouTube, my personal Twitter. It's an AMA Charles Hoskinson's running. There's no IO branding here. There's no Cardano branding here. Whatever people ask me, I answer the question. But you come back to this. Why? Because the only thing you care about is number go up. And when it goes up, what do? You sell it. You leave the ecosystem. And you say, look at how smart I am. Now I can get laid. I can go buy a BMW. I don't know why you do that. Terrible investment. Never buy a BMW. I'm going to go buy a BMW. Yay. Wear a white tracksuit. Go to the club. All the girls will love me now. Yay. I have money. Woo. Oh, hang on a second here. I have to get government approval to actually drive my car. Oh, hang on a second here. I actually have to fill out this consent form right over here. And my curfew is 9 o'clock, so I can only get the girls between 8 and 9. Why? Because you live in a totalitarian dictatorship hellscape. But you got your BMW, didn't you? Because never went up, right? Every single thing we've said we're going to do as an ecosystem and a roadmap, we did as an ecosystem. We walked through it. We wrote the papers, wrote the code, put the effort in to build something that can change the world. Every dimension of it, from your voting systems to your supply chain systems, your identity systems, every step of the way. Cardano is built for the centuries, not for days and weeks. And it was built in a balanced way that left no one behind. That's what we do. That's who we are. It's not my job to sit on a ledge and say, God, how do we get adoption? God, how do we do that? And if you think that was my job, then tell me, where did I sign up for it? Where did I tell you that was my job? I said, I'm going to go write some code. We're going to go write some papers. We're going to bring an ecosystem together. And on-chain government can make some priorities and decisions. If you think this is a priority and decision, as a member of the ecosystem, have your voice be heard and tell the on-chain government, that's what I want. That's where we go. That's what we do. And you know what? If it's a good government, it's effective and efficient, it will do that. And if it has a good constitution, it'll do that within constraints that avoid it violating the integrity of the system, like printing ADA out of thin air, for example, giving it to all your friends and cronies. And you know what you'll find is that there are people who believe in more than just number go up, and they care about the system's potential and ability to change the world around you. And you have to go persuade and convince those people to abandon that part of the roadmap to make you money so you can buy your car and move on and go get your girl with your white tracksuit and these other things, to play a stereotype. Sorry, guys, I'm not really in a forgiving mood these days. I'm not really going to accept it anymore. You know, I've been here for 10 plus years in this industry, and there's nothing more frustrating in life than every single day putting so much effort into something and building something great and looking on the other side and people saying it's a failure because of something you don't control. It's like building sandcastles and then the tide comes in and destroys them. You know, and this is where we're at when the only thing people have is avarice in the back of their mind. Can you get me to Rare Evo? I live here. Love to meet you. You gotta come. Buy a ticket, man. I have a job. It's great to talk about the possibilities and belittle people who still have normal lives and normal bills to pay. ADA is not here to pay your bills. This is not a financial investment. I keep saying it again and again and again for 10 years. The purpose of cryptocurrency ecosystems is new economic, political, and social infrastructure. The point of this ecosystem is not your financial freedom. The point of this ecosystem is to rebuild the concepts of money, of Wall Street, of banking. The point of this ecosystem is to liberate you and give you economic agency and identity again, so that when you have assets, you actually own and control them, not somebody else who pretends like you do and takes them the minute you become politically inconvenient to them. The point of this ecosystem, make sure your voice and vote counts, and that you have transparency and accountability and integrity. And because you have sound money, you can retire with the money that you've earned, as opposed to watching your retirement eat away as you experience hyperinflation, and the social systems that you get freedom of association, commerce, and expression. That's the point of what we build and do. And the token is the fuel for that. The more people use it, long term, the ecosystem grows. And if it really does conquer the world, yes, it'll be the dominant economic power of the world, as we've started seeing with things like Bitcoin, for example. But that is a byproduct of the success in changing the economic, political, and social systems. And when you say things like normal lives, normal bills to pay, what you're inferring is the laborers should then give you US dollars to pay your bills. And that's not what we do here. That's not why I signed up, not why many of the people in the beginning signed up, because there was no way to even conceive of paying bills in the early days. There was no money. We were frustrated and tired of being lied to. We were frustrated and tired of our money being destroyed, of corporations controlling everything and being more powerful than governments. We were frustrated and tired of living in a world where we were on a one-way street to a dystopian hellscape. And you know what? In 2024, we've now lived through losing Afghanistan, COVID lockdowns, $35 trillion in national debt, massive social division, deplatforming, people being arrested for tweets. We now live in a world that is far more violent than it was just 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where people are shooting presidential candidates. You know, we thought that was stuff we saw on TV decades ago, and it doesn't happen anymore. Now it's back. Half of America doesn't even care. It says it was made up. That's how divided we are. That's the world we live in right now. Crypto is needed now more than ever because we have to reset the institutions. We have to restore integrity to things. That is the point of these types of things. Normal guy, normal lives, normal things to do. There are no such things as normal lives anymore. They don't exist. It's a fantasy. Sorry, you don't get to buy a home anymore. Sorry, you don't get a stable 20, 30, 40-year career anymore. You're going to get laid off. Inflation's going to eat away at your savings. You don't get to retire anymore. All the promises the government's made to you about Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, do you really honestly believe they're going to do it for you? No, so sorry. It's not going to happen. Oh, and by the way, your kids, everything that they learn has no bearing on reality. It's whatever the agenda of the state is. And whether they're competitive or not doesn't particularly matter, because they're not actually going to get jobs when they graduate. Is that a normal life? No, but that's the life that everybody's now headed towards. Oh, and in about 5 or 10 years, humanoid robots are going to replace most of the blue-collar jobs in America with AI. Look at all the Tesla Optimus spots and these types of things. That is the default setting. Do you want to live in that world, Mr. Normal Lives and normal bills to pay? If you don't want to live in that world, you have to have an alternative system. And that's what we build. And if your only assessment of that alternative system's quality is your ability to divest from that system, to go back to the legacy system, to pay your legacy bills as we head on that one-way street, then I think you have the wrong idea about who we are and what we do. And I respect that you may disagree. Then perhaps you should then buy meme coins or other things that where they have no philosophical core or intention to prevent the horrible dystopian world we're heading towards. Maybe, just maybe, you should consider a different course of action in your financial life. But don't burden the system with this unrealistic demand. Because you know what? We don't control the price. Not once have I ever asserted it or be naive enough to believe we could influence it. It's not possible. It's random. It's stochastic. You could do every single thing right and be worthless. You can do every single thing wrong and be worth $50 billion. Look at Luna. And it can all go away overnight. And it can just surge the next day. There's no rhyme and reason behind it. There's a coin right now that has a 90+% pre-mine, led by Russian nationals living in Abu Dhabi. And somehow that has lots of value. It's just random. It's noise inside the system. So set that aside, and you have to ask yourself, why are you here? What's the point of being here? And if you're listening to me on a Friday morning, you know, it's right now 10:14 a.m., maybe the speech you're going to get from Charles Hoskinson is not going to be one about here's your ROI, but it's going to be about the philosophy of things and why I believe what I believe. That's why I'm here. That's why I share the time here, because I just don't have the time in life to go and talk about other stuff. I really don't. I don't care. And I'm sorry if that's offensive to you or inconvenient to you, but I care about the quality of life for everybody on the planet. I care about where we're going, and I care about how horrible things could be. And having traveled to 74 countries, having shook hands with dictators, having gone to countries that have no notion of freedom and meeting people there, driving by favelas and townships and other places where people live on less than $1 a day. Maybe there's a transcendent ethic behind my thinking in why I want to do what I do and why I build what I do. And I've tried to inculcate those principles as best as I could into the Cardano ecosystem. But it's not my call. That's the other great irony of your comments. You guys look to me and you say, well, we got to convince him to care about price. We got to do this. It's not my call. You have an on-chain government. That's the only thing you care about. Delegate to D-reps that will sell you that poison. That's the only thing you care about. Take Cardano in that particular direction. That's the magic of Voltaire and Chang. You're in charge. It's your decision ultimately, not mine. I've done my best to try to give some wisdom into the system, to try to leave a legacy of decentralized knowledge creation. That's the example of the university connections. I've done my best to try to create institutions like Intersect that are members-based organizations. I've done my best to work with other actors like the foundation, but that's that. I can't do any more. I've put the initial state of the system and I've clinged the domino. It's up to you guys now to make that decision about what does that all mean. It would be heartbreaking if the only thing that meant was to make you some money and for us to go to that dystopian hellscape. That's your decision, not mine. It would be magical if you decide to pick that up and keep walking with me down the road to freedom, because I'm not going to stop walking down that road. I'm not going to stop speaking out. I'm not going to stop wearing my heart on my sleeve and pissing people off. I'm going to be a firebrand. And I think I'd be far more effective being a firebrand with a decentralized government than being a firebrand as a face of something. Because then the people I piss off don't ascribe that onto that decentralized protocol, and it doesn't deserve it. Cardano doesn't deserve the things I do wrong. And so I need to get out of the way of making it deserve those, having that happen. Charles, if we're considering using treasury funds to bring USDC to Cardano, how do you plan to vote? I know the foundation's been trying to do it for a while, and they're pushing hard, and I don't think it's a money problem, guys. I really honestly don't. And I think there's some wonderful homegrown options, and we're certainly pushing hard for them on both the algorithmic and the asset-backed side, both sovereign and private. And I think there's a lot of options there. Circle hasn't given us a fair shake as an ecosystem. And it's deeply frustrating, but it is what it is. And the foundation has very patient people who are great negotiators, and they are far more patient than me and far less partisan than me in certain respects. I think they're the best people in the ecosystem to try to figure this one out, but it is not an issue of just hand over a pile of money and then a contract to sign and everybody's happy. It's been more difficult. Did you go to uni? Yeah, of course. How do we reduce population? There's some sort of invisible hand that's doing that in the world. Fertility's plummeting and birth rates are plummeting by every measurable index. For what it's worth, Charles, we did vote to throw you under the bus if we had to choose between you and centralizing Cardano. I remember that poll, and it proved a very valid point. But Steve over at Forbes, he can't get that point, so therefore we are a cult. Go figure. Well, that's a good question from Willius. What should I have my 8-year-old learning so he can become a dev expert in Cardano Midnight by the time he becomes a teenager? Hard to predict, because by the time he's a teenager, Cardano is going to have gone through 5+ years of innovation, and things are going to evolve and change. So my view is you really focus on first principles. And what you need to do is give your child a love of 3 things. And if you get those love of 3 things, then everything is going to work its way out. First, you get him to really understand that the world is malleable around him, and to know that he can influence and change it. And you do that by teaching him a little bit about chemistry, and actually have him do some engineering stuff, like get a Raspberry Pi, get a little robot, and basically build something with them. Take something apart and put it back together. Problem with the world around us right now is this is all like disposable and fixed. You can't open it, you can't play with it. It's magic. When my grandfather's growing up, he'd buy a vacuum cleaner and come with a manual on how to repair it, and that's a retail purchase. Why? Because there was an expectation that when you purchased something, you had a relationship with it. You'd work on your car, you'd work on your thing. So that maker mindset, that tinkerer mindset, is the very first thing. Second, get familiarity with data science and Python, because it then gives you the ability to navigate so many things in life, all the stems. And by speaking a programming language, by actually having Python competency, you have access to everything in the AI world and all this other stuff, and they'll just intuitively leverage and use that to push forward. Third, understand the connection between markets, networks, and the internet, and these social physics that work. And there's actually a really great book. Let me give it to you. 8-year-old cannot read it. Yeah, here we go. And I actually talked to Kleinberg about a second edition. I called him up and I said, you gotta write a second edition on this one. Wah! Okay, it's called Networks, Crowds, and Markets: Reasoning About a Highly Connected World. This is the book that I read that convinced me to enter the cryptocurrency industry full time. So I read it around 2011, and basically what this book is all about is the intersection of networks and social networks, computer networks, markets, and all the social dynamics that exist there. And so it gives you all the foundational knowledge. And so it starts with an overview. It talks about graph theory. Then after you get through the entire network part, then you start learning about game theory and how game theory works. And you learn a lot about markets. Then you learn about information networks and the World Wide Web. Okay. And then you talk about network dynamics, population models. So kind of like complex adaptive systems and system theory and these types of things. And then you work your way into institutions and aggregate behavior. So when you put all these things together, what's the emergent property of it? I don't quite know how to make this understandable for an 8-year-old yet. It's not even understandable for most adults, but this is the blueprint for why crypto worked. When I read this book, it became obvious to me that money wants to be free. If information's free, value transfer has to be free. It has to be instantaneous around the entire world. And they just nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. And the problem was they were looking at it from an academic lens. And so there was a lot of stuff there, but there's a translation mismatch to the common language. But systems theory is just so incredibly important. And there's actually a wonderful organization, Santa Fe Institute. Can't type today. Hands are still a little messed up from the jungle. And they have a whole bunch of education and things on applied complexity and so forth. But these guys are like the OGs of complexity theory, systems theory, these things. But wonderful book, highly recommend. So find a way to deconstruct this. In fact, we could give it a shot. So we have this fact-checking EV. So let's ask our AI. All right, let's role play. You're an expert on children education, and here is a website. Design a way to explain these concepts to an 8-year-old. All right, you ready for your one shot? Oh no, Claude failed. All right, let's try ChatGPT. Sorry, Anthropic. You guys let me down, dog. You let me down. Okay, GPT 4.0. All right. I'm loving it. All right. Where were we? So what we're going to do is we're going to copy paste this into here. And let's see what happens. Searching the web, browsing. All right. To explain the concepts from the book Networks, Crowds, Markets to an 8-year-old, we can use simple analogies. Networks, crowds, markets. Networks being an imaginary playground where all your friends are connected by ropes, and each friend can pull on the rope to send a message or help others. This is like how people are connected on the internet or social groups. Crowds, think of a school assembly where everyone gathers. The more people join, the bigger the group, and their actions can influence what everyone else does, just like in a crowd. Markets, imagine a school fair where kids trade toys. Some toys are more popular, so kids are willing to trade more for them. This is how markets work, where people buy and sell things. There you go. Pretty cool. So it's a kind of the surface, but in a few years, these tools are going to be so powerful that they actually can work with you Socratically, and you can design out a curriculum. But the intersection of networks and crowds and markets, single most valuable thing you can learn. Learn the world is malleable around you, and really invest a lot in that and restore agency and make your kid a really good problem solver. Get a love of computation and ability to communicate and interact with the computer. If they learn Python and they learn a little bit about data science, very easy to get into AI. And then that's a core skill set that will make them quite valuable. And then networks, crowds, markets, once you have that intersection, you're good to go. And the rest will take care of itself. They'll find the right cryptocurrencies and the right blockchain. And then eventually we'll develop enough of a love to self-study, because that's how you get to places. Everything in life, even mathematics, is malleable. And to prove a point, I have a book here. It's one of my favorite books, actually. Very dry. It's from Joel David Hamkins, Lectures on the Philosophy of Mathematics. She bought a few copies for the office because I give them out from time to time. And basically, it covers numbers, rigor, infinity, geometry, proof, computability, incompleteness, set theory. It's a really good 8-chapter tour de force of what makes math and why do we do math the way we do. And if you read it, you start realizing a lot of those things that you thought were set in stone and solid were just like your opinion, man. And you can build completely consistent systems that have different rules if one so chooses. Probably not as useful as the ones that we do. Why is that important? Because if math isn't as complete as we want it to be, then why the hell should the laws be and society be? The world is malleable. The people around you are always going to try to convince you that it's not, because they benefit from the way it's structured. The only thing that is consistent is change. Everything changes. Everybody dies. Everything resets. Everything is in a constant cycle of death and rebirth. And the sooner you can learn that lesson, the more you can learn that lesson, the more enjoyable life becomes, but more importantly, the more agency you end up having over it. And eventually you have the ability to change everything. You just have to have the courage to try. So my last piece of advice is, whatever you teach your son, teach him that failure is okay, as long as he learns to get back up and do it again till he gets there. And with that, my friends, it's been about 2 hours. Haven't done an AMA in a long time, but man, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I always love spending time with every one of you. Smartest community in all of crypto. You guys are the best community. We got a lot to do. We're always growing. We're always changing. I'm going to go get some barbecue while I still can. Cheers.